When I was around 23, I lived alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood just outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a rich area, but it was peaceful. The kind of place where everyone waved at each other, porch lights stayed on late, and nothing ever really happened. At least that's what I used to think. Back then, I worked late hours and had a habit of taking long walks at night with my dog, Milo. He was a tiny Dachshund mix, barely 10 pounds and not exactly intimidating. He rarely barked and usually stayed glued to my side. Those walks became my routine. The neighborhood streets were empty after midnight, and I liked the silence. The cold air helped clear my head after work, especially during a rough period in my life. One night in late November, Milo and I were walking through a stretch of road where the houses sat unusually far apart. Between each home was a wide grassy lot that disappeared into darkness once the streetlights ended. As we passed one of those empty gaps, I heard laughter, soft, quiet, a woman laughing somewhere in the darkness across the street. I stopped walking immediately. Milo froze beside me. The laugh came again, almost playful, like whoever it was found something funny about me standing there, searching the shadows, but I couldn't see anyone, not even movement. After about 10 seconds of staring into the darkness, a deep sense of unease crawled over me. I tugged Milo's leash and kept walking, trying to convince myself it was probably just some teenager messing around nearby. Still, something about it didn't feel normal. 20 minutes later, we looped back around the same street on our way home. This time, there was no laughter, just silence. When we finally got back to my house, I didn't bother turning on many lights. I was exhausted. I showered, brushed my teeth, and climbed into bed while Milo burrowed under the blankets like he always did. But sleep didn't come easy. I kept opening my eyes every few minutes for no reason at all. Eventually, I drifted off. Hours later, I woke suddenly in complete darkness. Milo was no longer beside me. I looked toward the bedroom door and saw him sitting there stiff and alert, ears perked forward. "Milo," I whispered. He glanced at me, then turned back toward the door without moving. That's when I heard it. The same laughter, soft and muffled. At first I thought it was coming from outside the front of the house. I got out of bed quietly and told Milo to stay. Then I stepped into the hallway and walked downstairs, every creak beneath my feet sounding deafening in the silence. I reached the front door and looked through the peephole. Nobody. The porch was empty. Then the laughter came again, louder this time, not outside, inside my house. I slowly turned around. The living room was completely dark, except for faint moonlight coming through the blinds, and sitting on my couch was a woman. I could barely make out her face, but I saw her smile, wide, empty, unmoving. She let out another quiet laugh the moment our eyes met. Terror hit me so hard I couldn't even think. I bolted upstairs, grabbed Milo, locked myself inside my bedroom closet, and called 911 while shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. The worst part was the silence afterward. I couldn't hear footsteps, couldn't hear movement. I had no idea whether she was still downstairs or standing right outside the bedroom door. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the house and found no one inside. But one officer spotted a woman walking barefoot through the neighborhood a few blocks away, wearing nothing but a thin white nightgown despite the freezing cold. She was in her 40s and clearly mentally unstable. The officers later told me she had a history of violent episodes and had been missing from another town nearly 40 miles away for over 2 weeks. Her family claimed she'd been sleepwalking. I don't believe that for a second. Police discovered she'd entered my house by smashing a small basement window while I was still out walking Milo, which means while I slept upstairs. She had probably been sitting silently in the dark, watching me the entire time. I moved out 3 months later. Even now, years later, I still wake up randomly throughout the night, checking dark corners of the room. And every once in a while, when the house is quiet enough, I swear I can still hear that laughter. About 3 months ago, I lived alone in a quiet cul-de-sac outside Portland, Oregon. Nothing unusual ever happened there. I worked remotely, kept mostly to myself, and honestly loved the peace of living alone. Then, one night, I woke up at exactly 1:50 a.m. I don't know why. It felt wrong somehow, like my body had forced itself awake from deep sleep. Still half asleep, I looked toward my bedroom door. It was open, just a few inches, but I always closed and locked it before bed. Always at first I tried convincing myself I must have forgotten, but something about seeing that door cracked open in the darkness filled me with immediate dread. I got up slowly and stepped into the hallway. The house was silent. I checked every room. Nothing was missing. Nothing looked disturbed. Eventually, I returned to bed, telling myself I was overreacting. Then it happened again the next night. And again after that. For nearly 3 weeks, I would wake up in the middle of the night to find my bedroom door standing open. Sometimes only slightly, sometimes halfway. I called the non-emergency police line once, but the officers didn't find anything unusual. Honestly, I don't think they believed me. Eventually paranoia took over my life, so I bought a cheap security camera and placed it on my nightstand facing the bedroom door. That night, I double-checked everything. Door locked, windows secured, lights off. Then I went to sleep. At 1:46 a.m. I woke up suddenly. The camera's recording light glowed beside the bed, and the door was open again. Instead of checking the house, I immediately grabbed the SD card and ran to my office to review the footage. At first, everything looked normal. The door stayed closed for hours. Then, at exactly 1:44 a.m., the doorknob slowly turned. The door creaked open. For nearly 30 seconds, the hallway remained completely dark. Then a figure stepped into the room. A tall man dressed entirely in black. He moved painfully slow, careful not to make a sound. He walked directly to my bedside and stood over me, watching me sleep. I felt sick. The footage showed him standing inches away from my face for almost 40 seconds without moving. Then he quietly turned around and left the room. Less than 20 seconds later, the video showed me waking up. The realization hit instantly. This had happened only minutes earlier. The man could still be inside the house. I sprinted back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, locked the door, and called 911. Police searched the entire property. Nothing. No fingerprints, no forced entry, no evidence at all. If not for the footage, they probably wouldn't have believed me. Investigators later suspected he'd been picking the locks every night, entering silently, and leaving before I fully woke up. The video quality was terrible. His face was impossible to identify, but one detective told me something that still haunts me. These kinds of people usually escalate eventually. That sentence was enough for me. I packed my life into boxes, left the state, and moved across the country. Sometimes I still replay the footage in my head, the way he stood there completely motionless, just staring at me while I slept. And what terrifies me most is knowing if I hadn't bought that camera, I might never have known he was there at all. Last October, I was driving home alone after visiting friends several states away. The drive there had felt easy. The drive back felt endless. By the time I reached the empty highways of Western Virginia, I'd been awake for almost 24 hours. I was exhausted. Around 1 and I glanced at my GPS and realized I'd missed my exit nearly 15 miles back. I honestly think I drifted into highway hypnosis for a few seconds. The mistake added almost 40 extra minutes to the trip, and I was already struggling to stay awake. A few miles later, I spotted a small roadside rest stop and decided to pull over for a quick nap. The place was completely empty. No cars, no trucks, nothing. I reclined my seat, pulled my hoodie over my eyes, and tried to sleep. About 10 minutes later, I heard someone cough outside the car. It startled me so badly I shot upright immediately. I looked around the parking lot, empty. No vehicles anywhere. The cough had sounded close though, too close. I stared out into the darkness for several minutes but saw nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself I was imagining things from exhaustion. An hour passed. Then I heard the cough again. This time I looked toward the rest stop building and caught movement behind one of the windows. Someone was inside. I sat there staring at the building for nearly half an hour waiting for the person to come out. They never did. Eventually, exhaustion started winning again. I leaned my seat back and closed my eyes. The next thing I knew, I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't understand why. Then I turned my head. A man was standing inches from my driver's side window. His face was nearly pressed against the glass. His eyes looked hollow and exhausted. The moment he realized I was awake, I started the car and slammed it into drive. Immediately, I heard a loud crunch beneath the tires, then hissing. He had placed spikes beneath my wheels. My tires were going flat. The man ran toward the driver's side door as the car struggled forward. I panicked. Without thinking, I threw the door open and tackled him to the pavement. I don't know where the adrenaline came from, but I managed to overpower him long enough to grab my phone and call 911. For 25 minutes, I held him there waiting for highway patrol to arrive. The entire time he kept laughing and mumbling incoherently. When officers finally arrived, he started screaming things that made my blood run cold. According to police, he'd been living in the woods near the highway for weeks, and based on the tools found nearby, he probably wasn't planning to simply rob me. What terrifies me most is realizing he had likely watched me for hours while I slept, waiting patiently, knowing nobody else was around for miles. If I hadn't woken up when I did, I honestly don't know if I would have survived that night.